Good afternoon. Yo, yeah, right. I am back again, DJ LP. So I'm catching you on the other side, I think, because I've just put in 2 hours. If you've been listening to Passion Radio today, then you will find that I'm back here again today, 2 till 4. And then you'll see me again later on, 8 till 10, with another reggae show. Reggae is my life. Near enough. I don't know. I think maybe I'd say about uh, uh, 85% of my life. Maybe. I think I'm going to have to give you some direct figures, some proper figures next week. I'll work it out and let you know, because the other subject that is so dear to my heart, as you listeners of my 2 to 4 on a Monday must know by now, it is all subjects that relate to dying, death, and grief. Does that make me some kind of weirdo? I don't know, but somebody in the community has to be, because there is a vital work that needs to be done. There are discussions that we need to have, conversations that are going to help us to reduce our grief in the future, to reduce our fear, and to reduce the severity of the experiences that none of us can escape. Oh, yes, it's all coming to us in the future. And, so many times recently, I've been hearing people say that, our elders are going, and so many members of our communities are leaving us. We need to be prepared, because, as the numbers from our communities start to decline, start to fall, we have to think about what's next for us as individuals, as families, as people, as communities. So I just want to thank you, all of you who join me regularly on this show, where we kind of put a bit of a pep in the step when it comes to conversations around dying, death, and grief. Wherever you are, whenever you are hearing this show, I want to say thank you for joining us and welcome. I am DJ LP on Passion Radio, and I play nothing but reggae. But 2 till 4 on a Monday, it's kind of a little bit of a rare groove. The subject that we're dealing with is kind of heavy. And so it's kind of nice to just start off with something easy and, juicy, and kind of end off each hour on the same note. So I think it's turned into a little bit of rare groove, misery, rare groove. And so I bring the information that I have for you in sandwich form, which I think they say is the best way, you know? Yeah. So what are we speaking about this week? Well, in week 1, I discussed my businesses, FACFO and Dipism. Dipism is death in practice. And through that, I offer end of life non-medical care support and guidance. I also conduct and arrange funerals, and I provide grief and bereavement coaching and mentoring too. I also provide training for people who want to be just like me. So if I am goals, then let me know, and let's get going with this work, because it needs to be done. And I can't do it alone. As Chronic says, I can't do it alone. So, yeah, I'm recruiting if any of you are interested. FACFO is the Federation of African and Caribbean Funeral Operatives. And once you are doing this work, that is where you belong. That is a directory that seeks to list everybody within our community up and down the country who is doing the work I do. On top of that, I'm looking for people who are stonemasons. I'm looking for people who make create coffins or caskets. I'm looking for our caterers who provide food for our wakes. I'm looking for the DJs that do funerals. I'm looking for our florists. Oh, so badly are we looking for florists. Yes, we have florists listed in the directory, and we do have DJs, and we do have so many people that are connected to the industry. And do you know what? Not everybody is on the directory. So if you are looking for somebody who provides those services, who may just be in your area, then do get in contact with me. My number is 07975 861085. Sorry, let me say that again, 07975 861089. You know, sometimes if you say it quickly, then you don't get it wrong. It just kind of slides off the tongue. So I'll say it again. My number, should you wish to contact me, is 07975 861089. If you have experienced grief, if you are in the situation where somebody that you love is in the end of life stage and you just need somebody to talk to, you need some advice, you need some guidance, you need some information, then contact me. Okay, let's do this together. And I think that might be my overall tagline. Let's do this together. Because I can't do it on my own. As simple as that. So today I thought that I would talk to you about grief. Grief is the pain and the suffering that is experienced after loss. Okay, grief is the pain and the suffering that is experienced after a loss. Mourning is the period of time during which signs of grief are made visible. Okay, so mourning is a period of time during which signs of grief are made visible. Okay, and a bereavement is the process of losing a close relationship. Okay, bereavement is the process of losing a close relationship. So let's just take this word bereavement. It's not necessarily linked to death. We commonly link it to death, but it's not necessarily, because we lose relationships in however many different ways. We fall out with our friends, we fall out with our family members. We might leave a workplace and have to say goodbye to colleagues and people that have become, you know, I don't know, people that we've worked with for so long. Sometimes people that we've worked with for so long do become friends. Sometimes we do look at workplace people as family. And sometimes we do forge close relationships with people. So, yeah, bereavement is the loss of a relationship, a close relationship. And sometimes we don't realize just how close those relationships are until the people that we are relating with pass away. So oftentimes we don't really realize that we are in a relationship with others. We might see people, we might grow up with people, we've never had a close friendship, or, you know, we might see them in passing. We might know their name. Sometimes we know more about their business than we actually care to know. And sometimes we know more about people's business not coming from the information that's been given to us directly from the people. So when we hear that they've passed away, it is a bereavement. This is a loss. We do feel this on many, many different levels. The work that I do, you know, covers all of those levels: the social, the emotional, the psychological, the physical, and the spiritual, and financial losses as well. When we experience a bereavement, there is no way that it will have no effect on us. It affects our lives. Depending on how close the person is, kind of dictates the severity. But sometimes it could be somebody that's, I don't know, abroad. You could look how many of us were affected by the death of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. And, you know, people that we would never have met, perhaps, you know, but when we heard Trayvon Martin had been killed, it was crazy. Yeah. So wherever you are in the world, wherever you are, you know, you do feel it. And as a one people, regardless of our background, you know, our kinship, our communities, the languages that we speak, those that hail from the continent that we have come to understand as Africa, we feel it when somebody from our kinship, from someone from our bloodline, somebody from our community, somebody debouts passes away. So bereavement is kind of deep, you know. I've seen grown men cry because they have lost their mobile phones. It's grief, you know. I have seen people lose their keys. I often lose my keys. The other day I was doing the monkey dance because I lost my purse. And I had to sit down and I had to really talk to myself. And you know what, Laura, it's okay. It's going to turn up. You're going to be all right. Sometimes we just need to go a little bit easier on ourselves, and we need to go easier on the people around us, because we all experience grief. We all experience bereavements, and we don't always get over them. We don't always just bounce back like that. And I will talk about that more as we go on through the show. But yeah, just to reiterate, you know, bereavement is a process of losing a close relationship, and we experience a lot of bereavement throughout our lives. It's natural, and it's how we deal with those bereavements, how we cope with them, that kind of dictates how we move forward. You know, it has a grand effect on our lives, because we are here having a human experience, and we do form attachments, whether we like it or not, whether we know it or not. We form attachments, and we form likenesses. You know, we form attractions, relationships based on the proximity, you know, our experiences, where people have been placed in our lives. And yeah, I could carry on about bereavements, but let's move on to mourning. So mourning is the period of time during which grief is displayed. Okay. And those signs of grief are made visible by, you know, maybe what we say, maybe the fact that everybody around us knows that our loved one has died, maybe by what we do, you know. Let's think about this. Back in the day, when a woman in the UK, let's take England, when a woman in England had died, she would wear black. And everybody knew that she was in mourning. And this was the case when Queen Victoria lost Albert, her beloved husband. And she took to her bed, I think, for quite a while, and she wore black, and she was in mourning for quite a few years, because she outlived him by quite a few years. And so I think that the general consensus was then that you wore black because black was a sign of mourning. Nowadays, black is fashion. Black is everything. Like, everyone wears black. So it's not always easy to tell if somebody is in mourning. It's not as if there's a specific color anymore that anybody gravitates to. So, you know, grief is kind of easier hidden, you could say. Grief isn't something that you could just be walking down the street and say, oh yeah, she's grieving, he's grieving. In truth, we all carry grief. We all carry grievances within our bodies. We have all had experiences that have never quite been settled, acknowledged, addressed, or dealt with. In the same light, we do carry ancestral grief, ancestral pain, and trauma Now, I'm not even just talking to those who hail from an African or Caribbean descent. I'm talking everybody, everybody in the world, everybody on earth today does carry a trauma within them, within these bodies, because we all descend from a line of people who have brought us to this point that we find ourselves in today. And, you know, every week I feel to play a snippet of video for you that is my absolute favorite, absolute favorite. And every week I forget to cue it up. And if I was to do it now, I wouldn't do it justice because it wouldn't be coming through the right channels. So I will sort that out for you soon. But it just explains that, you know, over 4,096, I think, people over 12 decades have gone into making the you that you are, the you that is listening to this show, the you that is traveling, the you that is breathing, the you that eats and sleeps and spends a lot of time on social media. So many people, so many lives, so many marriages, so many heartaches, so many ups and downs have gone in to making you. You are so unique and you are beautiful. And you know what? I often fly in the face of social reasoning when I say and maintain, you are beautiful, you are perfect. Nobody could do you. I can't do you. And you can't do Laura. I do Laura perfectly. I do Laura Pusey perfectly. Laura D. Pusey is me. And nobody can do me the way that I do me. And I can't do you. You are perfect. All you have to do is live your life to the fullest. That's it. Nobody has to tell you what to do, what you can or can't do. You don't need to seek approval from anybody, even though I do. Even though I let somebody down this morning, this weekend, sorry. I let someone down this weekend and I'm like, I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. That's not me. The people pleaser in me is like, oh my gosh, I did that. Yeah. But the truth be told, you know, we're all individuals and we've all come here to have an experience. And sometimes we will experience disappointment. But it's what we do from those disappointments that determines the future and how we move forward. And that is the beauty of life. So, going back to what I was saying about mourning, because I do tend to digress. I do digress a lot. Maybe I just love the sound of my own voice. I don't know. But mourning is the period of time during which signs of grief are made visible. And I just want to share with you where the root word, the etymology of the word mourning comes from, because there are many people now who are saying grand risings, you know, and trying to avoid words like hello, because hell is low, and mourning. Mourning is the process through which people can tell that you've experienced a grief. So why would we say good morning? Good morning. Is that a thing? Is it possible to have a good morning period? Well, I hope to show everybody how they can have a good morning period. But if somebody is waking up in the morning, you know, are they really coming out of a mournful situation? Well, it can be looked at in many different ways. You know, they say that sleep is likened to death, that when somebody is asleep, when they've laid their head to sleep, they are, you know, in a dead state. And then they wake up in the morning. I don't know. I don't know. Whatever your thoughts are, please do let me know. Message me, drop me a line on Facebook, because this is going to be posted on my Facebook page. If you want to find me, I'm L Pusey, ELLE PUSEY, You can also find this recording on YouTube as well under the Dipism channel. As well as going out on Passion Radio today. Let's go back to mourning. It comes from an old English word that is called Mourning. Murnan. Mourning. Sounds a bit Yorkshire, which means expressing a deep feeling of regret, grief, or loss. So that's Mourning. Murnan. And there's also an old Norse root for the term called morna, which translates to pine away. All right. So there's a mourner, which translates to pine away. And there's mournan, which means expressing a deep feeling of regret, grief, or loss. And then when we look at the etymology of the word morning, as in good morning, then the word derives from the Old English words. Now, you're going to have to bear with me, all right? I've got notes. I've been trying to say this and it's not easy. So excuse my Welsh. It might not even be Welsh, but excuse it anyway. So more when you more when you go. And the other one is more gen ing. Yeah. So these are like old English words, which basically means the start of the day. So these are two different meanings, and the difference is a U. One has got a U in it and the other one hasn't. When we are in mourning, we have experienced a loss and we are suffering the symptoms of grief. And when we wake up in the morning, then we're ready to start a new day. And we come out of the morning into the afternoon, and then into the afternoon we go into the night, and then we go into that sleep pattern, and you know, it just goes on and on and on. There's probably more information about that I will bring to you in the coming weeks, months, years, but for now we're going to leave it there. We're going to leave it there. So grief then. Grief is the pain and suffering that is experienced, okay, after a loss. Grief is the pain and the suffering that is experienced after a loss. And it's the body's natural way of communicating. It lets us know where we are. And I suppose grief makes us question who we are as well. It makes us really have to stop and think about our lives and, you know, where we are, what we're doing, what we've done so far. When we are grieving the loss of somebody that we have known or loved, we can't help but look at their lives and compare, you know, compare and assess. And I think that's what I like so much about death. I think that might be it. Because I've long known that I've really enjoyed going to a funeral of somebody who has a massive turnout, somebody who has touched the lives of so many people to the point where everybody comes out. And, you know, there are some times that somebody will go to a funeral and you say, well, how did you know the person? No, I didn't know the person, but I knew their this, that, and the other. I knew this person. I knew that person that was connected to them. And I've come to support, or I've heard that they were a great and wonderful person. So that's why I'm here. I'm paying my respects. I love our funerals because they're big and because they're a display. They are a show. It's an event. It's a performance. And you only do that, really. You only put that on when somebody has lived a life that you can turn around and say, yeah, I rate them still. I'm going to, you know, be logical about this, because more and more of us, more and more of our elders are living to an age where a lot of their friends and family members have gone before them. So, you know, funerals nowadays are, you know, for some people, getting smaller and smaller in number, and it doesn't mean that they haven't had a grand and wonderful, beautiful life. It just means that they've lived, and They are still to be respected and celebrated. So grief then, because I do tend to go off on one, is the body's way of communicating. And we have feelings of grief when we have become so attached to the person that has passed away. As I said before, oftentimes we don't realize just how close we have gotten to another person until they've gone. And when they've gone, it's like, oh my gosh, I was speaking to somebody recently who was saying, I didn't have enough time with her. I didn't have enough time. And, sometimes we can have a relationship with a friend and they don't die, but they experience a medical mishap, a health mishap, which means that you then no longer have access to them. Maybe they don't remember you. Maybe their body doesn't work anymore. Maybe, Alzheimer's, dementia, a stroke leaves them paralyzed, unable to communicate. And the person that you knew and loved and formed that close relationship has now gone, from the person that you remember them to be. We often don't know how much we've lost, or we don't realize how much we've loved until we have lost. And yeah, I suppose we don't realize how much we have lost until we realize that actually I did love that person. Sometimes we don't realize that we love people, because we take them for granted. We see them every day. They're in our lives. They come and go like clockwork. They're always there. But once they're gone, it's really sobering. It's physically painful. It's mentally and emotionally painful. And sometimes it can be spiritually painful if it leaves us wondering, why, God, why? So that's grief. I also want to talk about stigma, because, there is a stigma around crying and showing emotions when we have lost somebody. We're often encouraged to be strong, fix up, keep going, they're only dead. It's really weird. Yes, I'm scratching my head. It's really weird. And I think it's another thing that I am kind of intrigued by is people's reactions to other people's grief, to other people's period of mourning. We expect it to be over in a matter of days or months, weeks preferably, and to be able to just get back to work like nothing's happened and function as normal, like the person that you haven't known all your life or for 10 minutes hasn't just died. We are here having a human experience, and in that we have emotions, and we are supposed to express our emotions. It's so true what I've just said. We are supposed to express our emotions. The moment you're born, right, you slip out of that warm womb and you're here in the world. What's the first thing you do? You let out a cry. It's the most natural thing in the world. You come out and you're like, shite. Excuse my French, but you're like, oh my gosh, back again. What's the first thing you do? You cry. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I remember this. This is called life. That's for those of you who believe in kind of, I don't know, reincarnation and coming back time and time again. If that is your thought system, then maybe you do splash out and think, flipping heck, I've done it again. Or maybe it's the stark reality that you are now in a cold, sterile room with these big old ugly faces looking at you, and you realize that you are a human. You've come here to have this experience. But anyway, the first thing that we do when we are born is cry. And I have worked with Crew's Bereavement Hotline and Mind as well. And I have found myself so often telling people, you can cry. It's okay to cry. It's natural to cry. giving people permission to cry, because there are many people who don't realize that they can. It's seen as such a weakness on your part to shed tears, to be emotional, even if your partner died 10 years ago. I've had people say to me, but why am I still crying? Maybe you're still crying because you love that person so much. Maybe you're still crying because that grief is caught up in your body and it needs to be released. A beautiful sister, Amishade, once said to me that tears are the strongest form of libation, and that has been one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard. To cry is to honor the relationship that you had. To cry is to honor your feelings. It's to honor yourself. It is self-care. And oftentimes we feel so much better in ourselves once we have had a good cry, once we have experienced that release. I feel like I'm giving my book away, which is Tapestries of Grief. I talk about all of this in so much greater detail. And I do so because we need to be having these kind of conversations. We need to be sitting down and talking about our emotions, our feelings, and what it is that makes us decide, no, I'm not going to show any, I'm not going to cry. Oh, she did so well, she didn't cry once. How is that strength? Maybe actually a stronger person will allow themselves to cry. Maybe a stronger person will allow themselves to be like, you know what, today I feel like this, unapologetically, and I'm going to take time out to honor this feeling. That is how you clear your grief, by looking at it, by analyzing it, by taking time with it, by loving it, by recognizing the purpose of it and the gift that grief brings to you. Yes, you will lose your partner, your friend, your loved one. You will never stop grieving over them. You need to realize this. Grief doesn't just stop. It doesn't. But what continues is your life. What continues is your forward movement. And when you can look back on the life that has been lived by your friend, loved one, or that person down the road who you heard died, then you can look at the examples that they've left for you and decide how you want to continue the rest of your life. That is it in a nutshell. But in the UK especially, and maybe in some parts of the European countries, there is this stiff upper lip. You must stay strong. You must be gallant. You must be, a soldier through every kind of experience. You must soldier on. You must keep going. You can't afford to stop. Stopping is weakness. And if you stop, you will get chewed up. You will get caught up. You will break down. But, recently people have been saying that a breakdown is a breakthrough. You break through when you allow yourself to break down. When we think about these notions that are put in front of us, big men don't share their feelings. What, men don't cry? Men don't cry. You're a man. Be strong. I'm a strong Black woman. I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to break down. That's beyond me. I'm bigger than that still. Where do these notions come from? Where do these thoughts come from? Where do these feelings that we can't afford to stop and just be come from? Where does the notion come from that you have to be strong for everybody? And if you're out there being strong for everybody, then who's the everybody that can cry that stops you from crying? We really have to think about this. If I lose somebody that is very dear to me and I'm crying for them, is that not a natural thing to do? If you have known somebody all your life and then they die and then you dust yourself off and go, whoo, 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 whoo. Back to work I go. Where is the grief? What happens to that? Well, I'll tell you, it gets stored up in your body. It is stored up, and it will then eat away at your organs. It will eat away at your emotional and mental health. And what saddens me is that so many of our brothers and sisters languish in mental health facilities and maybe also even prisons because they were never given the opportunity to speak about the person that passed away and to cry over their loss. How many of our brothers are in that situation, that because they couldn't cry over their grief, they then internalized it. And then when the natural stage of anger came along, and it could be years later when it comes along, when that natural stage of anger comes along, they've just gone blur. And there you go. The crime is committed. The damage is done. More people are left without parents or children or siblings or friends. It's just a perpetual cycle that I strongly believe can be reduced, minimized, and even eradicated if we just look at this situation with some sense and reality. You know, let's sit down and let's talk about our grief without fear of judgment, because nobody on earth has the right to judge you if you are mourning, if you are grieving for your loved one. Nobody has the right to judge you. It is the most normal and natural thing that you can do. Whee! Sometimes I feel like I'm ranting. Sometimes I really do feel like I'm ranting. Another place where grief is quite forbidden is in the workplace. Gosh, you know, they've been gone 3 months. When are you coming back to work? Master needs you to generate some more money for the company. When are you coming back to work? Getting the temp in is costing us. You're sitting there doing nothing, crying. Come to work. You'll take your mind off things. And then when you go back to work, your performance isn't good enough. Why are you not performing at the same 100% that you were doing so before? Fix up. Come on, get back to work. Get back in the swing of things. Be that person that we know that we can rely on. You know, the working world is really hard. It doesn't acknowledge death at all. You go to work because you need to survive. You need an income so that you can support yourself and your family. But work is there to make a profit. That's the bottom line of every company. The bottom line of every company is to make a profit. You got some social enterprises, which is what Dippism is shaping up to be, which is there to, you know, help people to navigate this time, this period of time through which grief is acknowledged, is displayed, is made manifest. But when you go to work 9 times out of 10, it's because you're doing it for the money. There used to be caring professions, but caring professions have been, you know, replaced by this need to make money. And there's nothing wrong with it. But what I'm saying is that your company is there to make a profit. They make a profit out of you. And so they don't care whether you're upset. They don't care if you are socially or emotionally or spiritually uneven, unbalanced. They do not care. They care about where the money is coming in. Your boss might care. But guess what? Your boss has gone to work to make money, and your boss has got aims and goals and objectives and all the rest of it, points and I don't know, all sorts of targets that they have to meet. And his manager, and all the way up until you get to the big boss who's so far removed from you, he doesn't even know what your name is. And guess what? He doesn't care that you're grieving. He wants the work done. So we really do have to take time for our own grief. We really can't expect somebody else to be looking out for us. And even if your manager says, you know what, you're not ready, take a few more weeks off, they will still expect you to return to work. When they say to you, take a few weeks off, it is because they want you to come back and perform at your optimum, at your best, you know? Such is life. As Sonneting said, that's the way it is, and that's the truth of the matter. But you know, there are so many different types of grief. In my book, Tapestries of Grief, I have spoken about well over 17. I've probably spoken about over 20 different types of grief. And, you know, we're coming to the top of the hour, so I'll probably discuss that more in more detail in the next hour. But, you know, in this last 10 minutes, I suppose, I'm going to talk about my experiences of grief. I remember the first tragedy that I experienced, and that would have been Hillsborough. And the Hillsborough tragedy happened in 1989. And I remember I saw it on the television, like the stand collapsed, and it's like all these people, and it was just mayhem. And that was like my first real kind of tragedy that I experienced. That was like crazy. How old was I? 89. I was about 12, maybe. Maybe. I'm kind of giving my my age away. I wasn't 12. I was 11. And then there was the Dunblane massacre, and that happened in 1996 when some um, person who maybe was emotionally disturbed went into a school and gunned down a whole load of kids that were about to do PE. That was terrible. That happened in Scotland, the Dunblane massacre. You know, and then in 97, 1 year later, Princess Diana died. Now, if that didn't affect you, I don't know what did, because the whole world was affected when Princess Diana passed away. It was big things, you know, and to the point where we're even still talking about her death today. We're talking about her death even today. She left a mark, and you know, she changed the trajectory of so many different people's lives, and indeed the monarchy. You know, she changed the lineup. She broke the hearts of people. It was like a colorless death. It was like everybody felt it when she died, and under such weird circumstances as well. It didn't make a sense at all, you know. And then we've got the Industrial Revolution. Let's look at that. I mean, I wasn't around for that. I've not been on Earth that long. Maybe I was there around that time. I don't know, in a different body, in a different life. But the Industrial Revolution, a lot of people died through that, you know. A lot of people in the UK, people were killed in workhouses, in mills. You know, a lot of the rules and regulations that we have in place today are because of those people that died yesterday. And I remember, because I used to work on the underground, and this guy said to me, you know, we only have rules and regulations because people have had to die for them to be created. Otherwise, you know, it would just be crazy. So many people then did get trapped up in machines and lost limbs and lost their lives. The conditions were nasty and filthy. People were nasty and filthy. A lot of the buildings today are still kind of black with soot. You know, there's been tragedies upon tragedies and life stories that have been mixed with miseries and sad, woeful stories. And then we have the Holocaust that happened in Nazi Germany. And that still has an effect on the people. You know, people are still talking about, you know, the experiences that those people had back then. still today, you know, it's still just as current as it was back then. And you know, those rulers at that time, because we seem to think that it was just one, but no, there were many. Many of them managed to escape and went to live in America, and they started their new lives, and their offspring today are still in privileged positions. Check your history. It's all there. Nothing is hidden, because if they hide it, then they're going against free will. But that's me going into territory that I'm not here to discuss today. And maybe one day I will, but today's not that day. But what strikes me about the descendants of the people who experienced directly the injustices of the Holocaust during the years of 1941 and 1945 is that those descendants report enduring occasions of stress and trauma that has been passed down through the generations. Let's think of that. During the years 1941 and 1945, the Holocaust took place. Now, my years can be out a bit. Maybe they're out a bit. Maybe it was a bit longer than that, right? But the crux of it, 1941 to 1945. And the descendants of those people are saying that they still experience enduring trauma reactions today to the grief, torment, torture, and sorrow that was experienced by their ancestors through which they have descended. Their bloodline is tainted. And so I can't talk about them without giving a salute to my ancestors and the ancestors of many of my friends and compadres, people who look like me, whose ancestors, they experienced the transatlantic enslavement for over 400 years. And then their descendants who went on to experience 200 plus years of colonialism. Yeah, we're talking about real trauma, real harrowing situations here. And so if those people that experienced, you know, if the descendants of those that experienced the Holocaust are still experiencing enduring trauma reactions after 400 years, after 600 years, winner must suffer, don't it? Surely it's in our blood. Surely we have work to do to clean up the trauma that was experienced by our ancestors that has been handed down directly within our DNA. It goes without question that a lot of the behaviors and reactions that we are seeing manifested in our brothers and sisters and within ourselves, myself, yourself, we are having traumatic reactions to experiences that have been handed down through the generations. And some of those, you know, experiences, I was speaking to somebody the other day, and, you know, we were talking about the beatings, childhood beatings, the severity of such beatings, the evilness that went into the beatings that we experienced when we were growing up. It wasn't natural, it wasn't normal. And if we had spoken about it, we would have been removed if the dominant race cared to remove us. And even then, sorry, that has a knock-on effect when we are removed because we have been left wondering who we are. We're wondering who we are anyway. But then when we are left and then we're raised by people of a different nation, background, tribe and tongue who just do not identify with us, why? The world is in trouble. Okay, so we're coming up to the top of the hour now. What I am going to do is play us out. Is that okay with you? I'm going to play us out and then I'm going to come back after the break. I'm going to give you, just a touch of love, a little bit, just a touch. It's just a touch of love. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining me. You are listening to DJ LP on Passion Radio. And yeah, when I'm away from Passion, who am I? I am Laura D. Pusey, and you can find me talking about dying, death, and grief, and all the beautiful subjects that kind of come off of those three events. So before the break, I played you. What did I play with you? Just a touch of love, a little bit. And I kind of was like, right, okay. Because the person who actually sung that song, that amazing song, is called Slave. He goes under the name of Slave. How ironic from what we were talking about just before the break. Personally, I don't like to use the word slave. The people from that continent that we so regularly identify as Africa were enslaved. They were people who were enslaved. They were men, women, they were tradesmen, they were physicians, they were doctors, nurses, teachers, leaders, students. They were people, they were the backbones of their families, they were the backbones of their communities, of their nations, and they were enslaved. So, that's personally why I don't really like to use that word. And you're not really going to hear me talking often about the transatlantic enslavement movement or experience because, as far as I know, I wasn't there to experience it. And I want to focus on the amazing things that, that have come of a people, of these nations, of these tradesmen, of these men and women, of these physicians, of these doctors and nurses, of these people that were taken. I want to learn more about that, the period of time before that happened, and what we are doing since that happened, and how we're getting ourselves back on our feet, and how we are moving forward as people, as individuals, as we look back on these journeys that have been, so deeply rooted in the past. We are indeed noted to be the oldest people on earth. And so why don't we celebrate that? Why don't we celebrate the fact that we are something else? We are something else. We are a different set of people. Everybody from every nation, tribe, tongue, background has their own uniqueness, their own quirky ways, everything that kind of makes them who they are. Why not just celebrate that and see how we can maximize on that and, boost it to the best for our children, for our grandchildren, and our descendants, so that they look back on us and say, wow, grandma, great grandma, great 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 grandma DJ LP, she was smaddy. I think I'd rather hear that than them go further back and say, great 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 grandma, granddad was a slave. No, they weren't a slave. They were people who were enslaved. And that takes me to Dr. Joy DeGruy, who talks about post-traumatic slave syndrome, which explains the adaptive survival behaviors of people of the diaspora, the behaviors that they display as a result of the ancestral woes, abuses, and gross mistreatment that is carried down through their bloodline. PTSS, post-traumatic slave syndrome, PTSS, manifests as a form of, I don't know whether the word would be pathology, that was predicated on the belief that those of the diaspora were inherently genetically inferior to people from other countries, from other continents, from other islands, from other places, you know, that apparently that they were inferior. And PTSS has also contributed to our reactions to institutionalized racism, which we continue to feel the effects from today. You know, this institutionalism, this institution of racism that is made manifest through the institutions under which we abide, work with, you know, work into, feed into. They were not created for us. They were created off our backs. They were created against us. They were created to continue to thrive off our energy. And so, you know, it's only natural that we would experience physical reactions to that. You know, when injustices are experienced, it's only natural that we would have a reaction. And that kind of goes back to what I'm saying about grief. When we're not able to express that reaction, it will sit in our bodies and it will work away at our bodies, at our physical. And it just kind of leads on to a point that I heard for the first time ever that was made by a doctor in America called Rayshawn Ray. Dr. Rayshawn Ray. And he was talking about a thing that was also spoken about by a woman called Michelle Kelly Irvin. They talk about this thing. I'm going to describe it to you, but through the words of my book, Tapestries of Grief, because I've written about it in more detail there. But the book says, via me, our stresses and conflicts and traumas are absorbed at times without further thought because we simply need to keep going. Okay, so our stresses and conflicts and traumas are absorbed at times without further thought because we simply need to keep going. Left unaddressed, they often sit in the background of our lives, adding to the wear and tear of our bodies, rather much like little bombs ticking silently away. What we're talking about here, what Dr. Rayshawn was talking about here, what Dr. Kelly Irving was talking about here is the allostatic load. It's an allostatic load. That's what it's called. ALLOSTATIC, the allostatic load, which accumulates as we are exposed to added pressure and stress. I hope you're hearing what I'm saying here. The allostatic load accumulates as we are exposed to added pressure and stress. We are weakened in this way. We are most susceptible to health conditions that lead to an increased likelihood of young or sudden death. So let's go back, okay? We have, in this lifetime, in our lifetime, in this body that you sit in now, yeah, from the moment you're born, right, regardless of what color you are, okay, you are subject to stresses and conflicts and traumas. Those stresses and conflicts and traumas are held in the body. Of course they are. They are absorbed. You don't absorb anything outside of you, like into another outside. It comes into you, okay? So they're absorbed within us. They're held in our bodies. These stresses, these conflicts, these traumas. They're held within our bodies. And we don't think about them because we can't see them. They're not affecting us. They don't stop us from living our day-to-day life. So we don't think about them again. We just keep going because we need to keep going because we've got to pay the bills. We've got to raise the children. We've got to care for our parents or our loved ones or our youths. We've got to, go to work and keep the system going so that we have got the money. It's a cycle. And so, we really are in a rat race. When they say that we're in a rat race, they're not joking. We're on a wheel and we just have to keep going on this wheel. And as we're on this wheel, we're getting poked and we're getting prodded. And we have to keep going because the thought of us stopping is incomprehensible. What actually would happen if I stopped? I'd lose the house and then we'd be homeless. We might have to live in the car. And then if we live in the car, little Johnny's going to get sick. And then if little Johnny gets sick, then, we might all get sick. And, everything leads to death, doesn't it? So if everything leads to death, why not die happy? Why not die happy? Why not die with a smile on your face? Like, it's all going to end the same anyway. Should I even be going down that route? Probably not. Maybe not. But I'm just thinking about this allostatic load because when I first heard about it, I was blown away. And I've mentioned before that it's like when you go to like a crazy cat lady's house and you come out of there and you've got these bits of fur and hair like on your clothing or something. Or let's say that you go to your aunt's house or your grand's house or your friend's mum's house or whatever, and she's been cooking and you come out of there and you smell of food. Yeah, you can't see the food. It's not directly on you. It's not on your clothes, but you might even walk from one room into another and somebody's like, yeah, I can smell, blah blah was frying fish. Yeah, I can smell it on your clothes. That's the allostatic load. It accumulates as we are exposed to added pressures and stresses. We can't see it. It's absorbed by our bodies. And so with every added stress, with every added trauma, with every added pressure that we experience, our organs are really tested. They are overworked. Our blood, we might experience high blood pressure. We might experience diabetes. We might think that all these things are carried down through the generation. No, we might think, that we are, that it's carried down through the generations. So we're predisposed because mum had it or dad had it, grandma had it. The same with cancers. We might just think, we're supposed to get it because somebody in our lineage had it. Not necessarily. Maybe, just maybe, they experienced it because they were exposed to stresses and traumas and pressures that were absorbed by their body. And so we're doing the same. And we're absorbing all this stress and trauma. And then we're told, well, you can't cry about it. You can't feel emotions over it because you've got to go to work or you've got to be strong or people are going to look at you and judge you. People are going to think you're weak. What, you can't handle that? You call yourself a man? Who do you think you are? She ain't a strong black woman. Look at her, she's crying again. The allostatic load is a serious thing. We need to know about these things. We need to talk about them. When you've got a kettle and it's just ready to click off because it's boiled, do we really want to be clicking off? What does clicking off look like? Because it ain't pretty when a person clicks off. It can lead to mental distress that then sees the person in an institution pumped with chemicals that were not designed for their highest good. Because originally we weren't We weren't on a chemical-based diet. You know, those physicians and doctors and nurses that were taken from the continent, they weren't using regular antibiotics and cocodamols and paracetamols to heal the ailments. They were working with nature. They were working within nature. They were nature. They were of the earth. They were using remedies. And you know what, as well? I dare to think that the pressures that they were healing were not like the ones that we are experiencing today. Now, I could be speaking out of turn because, as far as I know, as I've said, I wasn't there. I can only talk about today, and I can only talk about what I see my brothers and sisters and men and women go through on a regular. Every day that I go onto Facebook, and I don't go on Facebook often, but every time I go on Facebook, there is undoubtedly, undeniably, another post that is talking about the loss of somebody close, RIP. There is always somebody on there who has lost somebody, and it's like Facebook has become like a notice board of grief, but we don't seem to realize it. We don't seem to recognize that that's what it's become, because we've got to survive. We've got to keep going, you know, but these time bombs are ticking silently away in our bodies, and we're not addressing them because we don't know that they're there, because we don't realize that our organs are under pressure, because they're now having to deal with what's being absorbed from our external environment. Wow, it's deep. It's so deep that I'm scaring myself. I hope I'm not scaring you. But, you know, the thought of it is really sad, because literally, if we are able to come together and talk about our grief, our upsets, our miseries, then we can maybe, perhaps, divert any real physical sickness from our bodies, from our minds, from our emotional and spiritual state. Perhaps we can live longer. Perhaps we can set better examples for our descendants. Perhaps we can move forward. Perhaps we can become united. Perhaps we can even like each other again. Maybe. That's all I'm saying. So our stresses and conflicts and traumas are absorbed at times without further thought, because we simply need to keep going. What are we keeping going for? What are we keeping going? What is it that we are continuing? What is it that we are feeding with our energy, with our life, with our time? Let's think about this. I'm not telling you off. I'm talking to myself. You and me are one. So I'm having a chat with my inner self, and I'm asking myself, what systems am I keeping going when I choose to invest my time and energy away from myself into external habits, work, conversations, you know, entertainment that isn't out there for my highest good. Ooh. Left unaddressed, they often sit in the background of our lives, adding to the wear and tear of our bodies, rather much like little time bombs ticking silently away. You know, here as I sit and talk to you now, I don't know whether I know that I've got cancerous cells in my body. Everybody does. And I don't know what stage they're at. You know, diabetes runs in my family. I don't know whether I have it. I can't see inside my body. I remember when I was little, there was one girl, I think she was in somewhere like Russia, and she could see inside people's bodies. Her eyes were like an X-ray machine, and she could say, your heart is in trouble, your liver, your kidney. And it's like, wow, can you imagine if we had people who could do that who could actually see inside your body and say, right, this is what needs to be healed. And you know what? This is the reason why it has been damaged in the first place. Grief sits in our lungs. Grief sits in our lungs. Disappointment sits in the gut, in our bowel. Disappointment sits in our gut. It sits in our bowel. And there are so many other things like that: disappointment, despair, hurt, trauma, turmoil, grief. There are so many of these things that actually go to certain parts of the body. And our bodies are like computers. And, you know, we get viruses. There are programs that are running that are not there for our highest good, but they're running internally. And we have no idea that they are there until we hit upon a problem and it hurts. And so we go to the doctor and we say, doctor, it hurts. And he says, where does it hurt? Ah, right, okay, I'm going to give you some phenylphthalein. You can't even pronounce it. But you go home and you take these tablets. These tablets have side effects. And so the side effects attack other parts of our bodies. Other organs are then put under pressure. Oh, my word. What am I saying here? I'm saying that things have to change. And I do honestly believe, hand on heart, that things can change if we only start talking to each other and looking within our bodies, listening to our bodies, and recognizing where we are. Because what did I say before about grief? I said grief is the body's way of communicating when the feelings of loss are so intense. Grief is our body's way of letting us know who we are and where we are. When we're sad, it's these emotions that we're relying on to let us know we're sad. You know? Our emotions are really important. We can't just want to have happy emotions all the time. We can't just want to feel bliss all the time. Because when we're out there feeling bliss and we're shutting ourselves down to any other feelings that we may be having in our bodies, we are deteriorating. You know, when you have toothache, that's your body letting you know that there is some kind of imbalance within your gums that is causing you to have pain. Pain is actually your friend. And I remember once I was on a Zoom and this woman was like, oh, pain is awful. It's disgusting. It's terrible. And I was like, no, actually, pain is your friend. It lets you know that something is unwell within you. It may be spiritual pain as well, because we can experience spiritual pain. When we realize that, you know, something that we have been told all our lives isn't sitting with us anymore. You know, when we have to then look for another way, look for another answer, look for another solution. I wish that I had in front of me my notebook. I see where my notebook is. My notebook is on the floor. I'm looking at it right now, but I'm not going to get up and go and get it. I'm going to see if I can remember. A conversation that I had with a friend of mine recently, and she said that, you know, questions are a reflection of an answer that needs to be recognized. And once you have the answer to the question, then it is a reflection of the action that needs to be taken. And once you have in front of you knowledge of the action that needs to be taken, then you have an awareness of another thought process or another direction or another opportunity that is available to you. Yeah, so problems are good. Problems generate questions that reveal answers, that give you an opportunity to look for another way of being. And once you find that other way of being, you may just find that you are happier in yourself. You may just find completion. But it all starts, as far as I'm concerned, from within. You know, I have seen with my own eyes that the lives of those people who are within the African diaspora, those lives are still a bid for survival. You know, we are out here surviving. Are we out here living? Are we thriving? Are we growing? We're under so much stress, trauma, you know, direct attack on so many different levels. Direct attack that we are absorbing, that our bodies are absorbing, and we don't even realize it's happening. We're under spiritual attack. We're under emotional attack, psychological attack, physical attack. The food that we're eating is tainted. The water that we're drinking is tainted. The air that we're breathing is tainted. You know, we're being hit in so many different directions and we have no idea. Our bodies are so amazing and so strong, you know, that we just keep going, that we don't absorb the level of trauma that we are under. We don't acknowledge it. We're not aware of it. We're completely blind to it. But the body knows, and the body is there fighting away and doing as much as it can. One day it might just give out. Oh, he died so young. He wasn't supposed to have died this young, you know. But we don't know. We really don't know the extent to which our bodies are working for us to keep us going. And I say that with full ignorance and full awareness of my ignorance of this body. But one thing that I'm realizing now, literally on my journey, is that every single thing in our bodies is there for us. It's there for us to learn from. It's there for us to grow from, and it's there for us to survive and thrive and live and grow and have more experience of life. To the point where, and I wasn't really going to make this announcement because I don't really see it as a big announcement. It's something that actually fills me with dread, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm actually going to start growing my hair again because I've come to realize and recognize that my shaving of my head is a trauma response. It's a response to the trauma that I experienced as a child. And that, you know, if I'm going to truly, fully love myself, then I have to embrace myself. You know, I can't just be here talking about it. I have to live it. If there's one thing that I hate, the thought of being is a hypocrite. And if ever you find me being hypocritical, please call me out. Call me out to my face. And if you feel you need to, then do it publicly. Put me on the spot. But that's the reason why I had to turn my life away from religion, because it was a dichotomy. It was a conflict. It was a conflict of my inner desires and those that were put on us. So as to be perceived as non-threatening, so as to be perceived as a person that is not going to cause any trouble, that is not going to rock the boat, so as to be perceived as somebody who's agreeable and nice and, you know, you can get on with. We change our behaviors to appease others. That's what we do. We often just minimize ourselves so that people from other cultures do not feel threatened. We set about adopting behaviors to appease the sensibilities of those from other races in a bid to shrug off the deeply ingrained perception of erraticness, aggressiveness, and brutality. Have you heard what I'm saying? We set about adopting behaviours to appease the sensibilities of those from other races in a bid to shrug off the deeply ingrained perception of erratic, aggressive, and brutish ways. However, in doing so, we live dramatically reduced lives. The struggle to survive is akin to a double-edged sword, because instead of extending our lives, those same behaviors of actively suppressing our true selves truncate our lives, thus rendering most of us susceptible to disease and infection. Let me just break that down. Now, I'm not breaking it down because I don't believe that you understand what I'm saying. I'm breaking it down because, you know, you've really got to feel these words. Yeah? The lives of those within the African diaspora are still a bid for survival, so as not to be perceived as any more of a threat than our skin appears to provoke. We do set about adopting behaviours to appease the sensibilities of those from other races in a bid to shrug off the deeply ingrained perception of erratic, aggressive, and brutish ways. However, in doing so, we live dramatically reduced lives. The struggle to survive is akin to a double-edged sword, because instead of extending our lives, those same behaviours actively serve to truncate them. They reduce our lives, thus rendering us most susceptible to disease and infection. So when your mate or Mask Johnny down the road, or Mask Peter, or Mask Miss or Ma, I don't know, Jane, or auntie this, auntie that, uncle this, uncle that, when they do pass away, and we do think that it's before their time, maybe this is why. Because years and years of, yes, master, no, master, I'm going to be good. I'm not a threat. I'm not a trouble. I'm not a problem. Let me change my accent. Let me change my clothes. Let me change my hairstyle, because I can't change my skin. You know, when we raise our children as well in the same way, when we hand these behaviors down, what we're doing is we're handing the life sentence down that will reduce their lives. This is a serious conversation, and I think that we need to be having more of these conversations so that we can actually sit and think about what it is that we're doing. And once again, you know, I am an African, Caribbean, British-born Black woman in my 40s. So I'm talking from my perspective. Primarily, I'm talking to people who look like me, because I know me, you know, I know where we're coming from. Maybe not as much as some people out there might know my culture more than me, who don't look like me. Why? Because we are the most researched people on earth. Research originated from us. There was no research until it was discerned or deciphered that we are different to they. And so as a result, as I've said before, PTSS is also continued by institutional racism, which continues to perpetuate injury, because we are seen as inherently genetically inferior to those from the dominant races. And the thing is, I'm not even saying anything that's not true. It's also documented. It's documented. It's out there, and it has to be out there for free will. Nothing is hidden. We take our free will and we engage in the systems. We take our free will and we engage in the institutions. And why? Because we don't have any of our own. We don't have any alternative. What we have is problems. We see that we have problems, but we're not asking the questions that are bringing the answers, that are providing us with other solutions, because it's easier for us to go to work, make our money, and keep our families going and survive. It's easier for us to just survive so that we can get out of here as soon as possible when it can be over. But then where are we going to? We're on earth in these bodies once. So why not just enjoy it? Let's enjoy the experience. Let's do this together. You know, let's find other ways. Let's have these conversations. This is why I wrote Tapestries of Grief. I wrote Tapestries of Grief so that we can sit down and have these conversations openly and honestly. I've sat and written this book so that we can cry together without fear, so that we can talk together, so that we can grow together, so that we can reunite ourselves. And I'm not even talking about reuniting myself with she down the road who I can't stand. I'm not talking about that. We need to reunite our inner selves. We need to unite with ourselves. We need to go in. We need to start to recognize who we are and how to use these computers and the extent to which they've been abused. That's what we need to do. We do that by having conversations. Because as I said before, our ancestors live within us, within our DNA. And they were the doctors, the teachers, the physicians, the tradesmen and women. They were the backbones of their communities and their families and their nations, and they were not reliant on medication, chemicals. They weren't. They would talk. There were rites of passage. There was guidance. So, you know, what are we doing? What are we doing? Well, every Thursday, 7:30 till 9 p.m., I host a grief group. It's a Zoom. And if you want more information about that, you can contact me on 07975 861089. I will be hosting face-to-face groups up and down the country. I have brothers and sisters that will be facilitating these groups on my behalf, working with me, because I can't do this alone. This is a movement that has to happen. This is why I'm working under instruction from my ancestors to create Dippism and to create FACFO, so that we can have these conversations, so that we can come to a state of healing, so that our future generations have a chance of actually living as opposed to surviving like we do. In Tapestries of Grief, I discuss over 20 different types of grief, easily. And I could probably, if I sat down to write volume 2, come up with a whole heap more. Yeah, we've had COVID-19, we've had the transatlantic enslavement movement, we've had the Industrial Revolution, which was funded and you know, lent heavily on the enslavement movement. There's so much that is going on in the world that rests off our backs, that can only continue because we invest in it, because we contribute our energy and our time to it. The rebel in me says, let's all down tools. Let's just call it a day. Let's just stop participating and You know, let's go back to our inherent ways. If we come together, then we will find that we actually have the answers. If we come together, we will find that we actually have all of the tools that we need and the resources. If we come together, we will find that the answers are actually within us because we have the knowledge and wisdoms of our ancestors, who, as I said before, are the oldest people on earth. Surely then the answer is within us. Surely it's not outside of us. Surely we have everything we need. Surely all we need to do is learn how to use these computers that we are sitting inside. And I know that I probably make it all sound easier than it is. It's not easy. It's work and it's painful and it hurts. But what have I said about pain? If we don't have the pain, then we don't have the growth. If we don't have the pain, then we don't know where we are. If we don't have the pain, then we don't have the progress. We don't have the forward movement. So what are we doing? Are we going to work together? Or are we just going to stay not talking about our grief and our experiences, not talking about our hurts and our pains, being those Black men that don't cry because it ain't cool, being those strong Black women that don't break down because we carry everything and everybody? Ah, and really, you know, if we're carrying everything and everybody thinks that they're carrying themselves, then really, what are we carrying? Who are we really fooling? And to what end? To an early grave? If that's the case, then why not die happy? Because everybody ends up dying in the end. I don't know. I don't know. At the beginning of the show, I explained that grief is the pain and suffering that is experienced after loss. Okay, we experience many losses throughout our lives, but I focus on death. So it's not like, you know, unusual to feel physical pain or emotional pain or spiritual pain when we are experiencing grief, because, you know, it's the indicator that lets us know that our bodies are in a state of imbalance, spiritually, emotionally, physically, mentally, psychologically, you know, and external factors such as our finances impinge on our grief. And it's not the other way round. Our grief does not impinge on our finances. Our finances impinge on our grief, because our grief is inside us. Our grief is our internal mechanism that tells us who we are, how we are, where we are, and what we're doing. Stuff like finances is external, you know, it matters greatly. Believe it matters greatly. When I tell you it matters greatly, I'm telling you, you know, it's not to be sniffed at, you know. But we do need to recognize that our emotional needs and our physical needs are paramount as we are having this experience that we call life, because life doesn't last very long. And so as a result of, you know, our losses, it's not unusual to feel guilt and shame. It's okay to be selfish. It's okay to be depressed. It's okay to be tired and lacking in motivation. It's okay to feel those things. They're inside of us. Those feelings need to be addressed. Otherwise, they will go to the parts of our bodies and they will just start yamming away. Yam, 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 and we won't know it's happening. And before we know it, we're sick. And before we know it, we're going to the doctor. And before we know it, we're on medication for the rest of our lives. Medication that will give us side effects that will then attack other organs in our bodies. You know, I'm really just trying to break it down as much as possible, because our losses, our primary losses, such as our person, our mate dying, will then cause us to have secondary losses. finances. You know, we might be now missing a second finance income that would have kept the family afloat, that normally kept the family afloat. We're missing their guidance. We're missing their support. We're missing their love. You know, we're missing their, guidance, their advice, their support, their love, their being, them washing the dishes, you know, them cooking the food, them spreading the beds, them getting the kids ready, you know, the teamwork that goes into families. Families are networks of people working together when everything is going well. But when that unit of family is disturbed, everything gone dotty. And instead of us coming together, so often we splinter off into our own worlds, and this causes stress and tension on the body. Okay, so what can I say after this big old massive rant that I really hope that you gain some clarification from. I really hope that you gain some knowledge and wisdom from. I really hope that you gain some form of empowerment from. I'm just going to say to you, my books, Tapestries of Grief, talks about this in greater detail. And my book, My Life's Tapestry, helps us to plan for our end of life experience, that which we would prefer, so that our family members know exactly what it is that we want when we come to that time. Now, I'm not saying that you're not going to walk out in front of a bus and get run over and die. I'm not saying that you're not going to go on the top of the road and find yourself being shot or stabbed. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that however it comes, it would be so much better if our families were better equipped so that we can have the send-off that we desire, that we deserve, so that we can be honoured for the lives that we have lived, for the way that we have touched those around us. You don't realise it often. You may not realise it at all, but somebody is looking at you and they are inspired by the way that you are, by the fact that you are. And what you are is the sum total of a good 4,096 odd ancestors over simply merely just 12 generations, which isn't long. You are unique. You are great and wonderful. You are precious and you are perfect, because I can't do you. You can't do me. I can't replicate all of your ancestors in my actions unless they're my ancestors too. And, you know, in that, I'm still going to have more and different weird and wonderful people in my lineage, in my bloodlines, that makes me who I am. You're unique. You're wonderful. You're perfect. You're precious. And I love you. On that note, I am going to end this show and I'm going to play out with Greg Perry. Variety is the spice of life.